Hey, this is Brock Mears. In this video, I'm going to go over lab number 5 on decision statements and use decision statements to create the American wire gauge calculator. Okay, so the objective of this is just to give you more exposure with if else or switch case. You can use whatever. But what you're going to do is you're going to prompt the user for a variable, a value, and then you're going to use if else statements to determine the wire gauge that they would use. And then what you're going to do is you will test this under 5 different input conditions, and you know what the results should be based on a table that I'm going to give you, and then you'll make sure that it works. And then what you'll do is upload that screenshot all in one shot and then return your source code. Okay, so here's kind of the background of this. The American wire gauge. So we've already talked about electrons and how electrons have current, or electrons have charge, and charge is an invisible force that you can use to move electrons. So one of the cool things about moving electrons is that when you do that, you can create very useful things like light, heat, motion. You can then use it to communicate, and it's just like unbelievable the things you can do. Now, the problem is that whenever you move an electron, since it's a thing, it actually does cause heat, no matter what. And when you run it down a wire, the wire will heat up. And if the wire gets too hot, it'll actually break, or it'll burn, or start a fire. And so they came up with this thing called the American wire gauge, which basically says if you have a certain amount of current, you should use this thickness of wire, because the thicker the wire, the more able it is to dissipate the heat. And so if you run, 1 amp down a very thin wire, it'll get super hot and it might break. But if you run it down a thick wire, the wire barely even heats up because it's able to dissipate. So they come up with these numbers, and these numbers they're not really intuitive. The lower number means bigger, higher number means smaller. So here's an example of like common wire gauges. So like these are real wire gauges right here. So this would be like 12 AWG down to like 6 AWG. So these are like really, really thick wires. And so this is just kind of the standard for it. So what you have here is a table that is a standard. And what you do here is you basically say, for the given current that you have, you're going to fall within a range so that you can tell the user, here's the wire gauge you should use. Okay, so what you got to do is you got to create a program where you will prompt the user for a current that they're using, and then you will spit back what wire gauge. Now, this is going to involve a lot of different decision statements, but it's also going to involve ranges. So as an example, you notice that American wire gauge 8 goes up to 40, right? So if somebody entered 39, you'd obviously say, okay, go ahead and do 8. But what if they entered 29, right? You have to have the logic in there to know that it's like, oh, okay, even though 8 could be used because 29 is less than 40, you had to check that, oh, if it's 29, it should have this within this range right here, okay? And so you got to read through this and kind of figure out how to check the range in there. So I just want to show you how this is going to look when you run it in order to give you just a feel for it. Okay, so let me show you what the output's going to look like. So standard thing, you're going to be like, here's the kind of output you're going to have, but let me just run mine so you can see it. So I'm going to do American wire gauge. Welcome to the AWG calculator. Enter your current in amps. If I hit 1 amp, it's going to pump back for 1 amp, give it in scientific notation with the units. You can use 26 AWG. So this 26 is the value here. That's what you're doing this big decision tree. If I do it again, I say 10, it gives me a different one, 18. If I do another one, I'm like 200, it'll be like, oh, sorry, I didn't run that. Let me clear that up. You got to run it. So then 200, and it's like, if you are pulling more than 200 amps, you need more than an AWG calculator from a 100 level programming class. You can enter it in any format you want, and it's just awesome. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. And again, just go through and test as you go. And then once you're done, test the 5 cases, upload it, and you're done.